Hello and welcome to our series of short recordings addressing the people, process and technology changes necessary to implement sustainability reporting and indeed be more sustainable as an organisation. Today we're going to cover the people-related considerations and we're going to be drawing on ACCA's own journey to be more sustainable and to communicate how we're doing. So I'm really pleased to say that I've got Maggie McGhee, Executive Director of Strategy and Governance, and Dale Burridge, Director of Global Business Services. And I'm Sharon Machado. I'm the Head of Sustainable Business and the co-researcher of the piece of work that this particular recording is about. So together we're going to discuss 4 key areas. 1, looking at how we create awareness amongst our people to be more sustainable and to report. The organisation changes necessary so that our people are best placed to deliver. And then 3, the skills that we need, and in particular the skills of professional accountants and how we access them. And then 4, looking at how we manage our external stakeholders who are central to providing the information for sustainability reporting, but also using it as well. So with no further ado, we're going to start on our first of the 4 areas, and I'm going to turn to Maggie for this particular one. And as we know that the reporting process isn't just happening in one team, it's all of us as an organisation coming together. And therefore, we all need to be on a learning and development journey. So if you could outline for me how we at ACCA go about it.
Thanks very much, Sharon. So I think the top line, I think you've got to say, if you're going to be sustainable and if you're going to report on it, then it's absolutely critical that the organisation as a whole is behind you. Because sustainability has to be part of every discussion. It has to be truly embedded, and that really supports learning and development. So at ACCA, we start with executive accountability. So what does that mean? Well, in terms of that, it means that at our executive board meetings, sustainability is an intrinsic part of our discussions, and that includes reporting on sustainability. We've also developed cross-functional working groups to support us because it's really important that you get that broad spread of knowledge and information. So that includes our finance and operations, our global business services, and we'll hear more from Dale in a bit, as well as our teams across the world in our market offices. And that brings together knowledge and experience and allows us to share information. But sustainability really has to be absolutely embedded in ways of working. And that really, as you said, it starts with training. It starts with the training for our people. And at ACCA, we've actually undertaken training for all of our people across the organisation, regardless of their level, and regardless actually of their role. And what we've tried to do through that training is raise a broad awareness. So what we cover are things like, what is sustainability? Actually, let's define it. And what does that definition mean in the context of ACCA? We've also covered, well, actually, what do we report on? What data do we need to capture? And I think the really important bit is, well, why do we need to capture that data? And then we've sort of taken it to a level of, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for your department? What does that mean for your team? And what does that mean for you as an individual? And then beyond that, we're also trying to encourage an understanding of all our people in terms of what do we report externally? What do we share with our stakeholders through our integrated report? So we cover all of that through our learning and development, through the training that we provide. And then that supports actually the operational side, because it's not the end in itself. It's great having people knowledgeable and having that awareness. But then it translates into, first, our strategic plan, but then also into the operational plans. And it's that learning and development that really is, I'd say, the sort of oil that makes everything work, because people understand what they're seeking to do through those plans. And also, we obviously supplement that with guidance, because things constantly change. So it's not a sort of thing you do once and then it's over.
And actually, I think a lot of what you've said does certainly resonate with the different teams that Dale and I come from in terms of the cross-functional working groups, how our data is shared and used amongst our teams. And that's something that we're going to be touching on upon a little bit later on. But for the time being, I'm going to move on and really think about the aspect of how our organisation is structured to deliver. And if there are changes necessary, what changes should they be?
Excellent. So I think in terms of it, you often hear the word organisational design, and it all feels somewhat big, bit scary, and definitely expensive. And I think you've got to sort of be realistic about what you need to achieve. Now, in ACCA, actually, our transformation wasn't so much in how we structure ourselves. Actually, we already had lots of globally distributed teams. Our transformation was really in how we work together and how we collaborate and bring people together around common challenges and issues. Now, from our perspective, we used our strategy team, which is a central team, as really the key, sort of, I'd say, driving force through it. We've called them an incubator. I think they're also an accelerator in terms of thinking in the organisation. But that strategy team has worked with teams across the organisation, so finance and operations, our global business services, key teams there in terms of the work that we need to do. The other team that they really worked very closely with was our risk team. And I think risk is so critical to this conversation. So if I look back perhaps 5 years, our risk reporting, our risk consideration around sustainability was really in its infancy. We did what we needed to do from an integrated report perspective, but it wasn't embedded in the way we operated as an organisation. Now, one of the things we've moved forward is actually embedding sustainability into our enterprise risk management framework. And that means sustainability risks are a critical consideration. I'd also say sustainability opportunities, because we always talk about risks, but it is two sides of the one coin. And of course, that's absolutely key, because that then supports how we report net zero, as I'm sure we'll come on to, but also how we respond to our commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals that were very publicly made. And also it reflects best practice, and that's the other element that we're continually working on. Best practice continually evolves, especially in the reporting place, and it's an area that we've continually tried to focus on. And I think for all of that, collaboration is absolutely key. So it isn't about having a very separate sustainability team, perhaps sat in the one room, talking amongst each other. It really is about bringing teams together, sharing information, sharing data, sharing the analysis, and collectively identifying what needs to be done. And for that, we're in a great position with technology. It really has provided great advancements for us. And I would say from ACCA's perspective, as an organisation, what we've sought to do is build capability across the organisation rather than in that specific team. And I think that does support integrated thinking. Mm-hmm. It supports genuine commitments to sustainability that need everyone to work together, but also reflects our size. You know, we may have 750,000 members and students, but actually as an organisation, we're just over 1,000 in terms of employees. So we need to make sure that we can operate in a way that's sustainable for us as well. So I would say in terms of it, it's very much a journey. That's the sort of great phrase, isn't it, in terms of it. And as sustainability grows and embeds, obviously we'll continue to reflect on our approach to building that capability.
So actually there's quite a lot of insight there, Maggie. You know, you talked about the collaboration. You talked about actually several times it being a journey and actually an integrated approach that ACCA has taken. And, you know, Dale, you've been at the heart of that. So I wonder if you've got any reflections that build upon what Maggie has just articulated just now.
Yeah, certainly. I think a point for me to emphasise, particularly with organisational design, and the way that we're structured at ACCA, we didn't need to make any real changes to our design. We have globally distributed teams. In my function, we're globally distributed, and that's really helped us in terms of gathering data and really producing a lot of our net zero reporting information. So I think that's certainly something that I think is worth considering. I think also what's worked really well for us, we've had a steering group. So we very early on in our process set up a steering group that was always focused around sustainability and sustainable development. And I think having that group of sustainability-minded people from the organisation, for me, that's really helped us build, I think, a guiding coalition for sustainability at ACCA. And I think any organisation having that, I think it's going to set them up for success with, I suppose, how they take this forward. So I think there's probably some of my key reflections from what Maggie's just said. And then I think the next bit for me, there's a guide, there's a section of the guide where you talk about investing in internal audit. So we've recently had an internal audit that we use to look at really just to provide some assurance around our sustainability approach, and also in particular around our net zero reporting. And that for us has been really useful. Our approach to sustainability at ACCA is heavily influenced, as you'd expect, by our values, in particular integrity. And so having audit engagement has been really, I think, valuable for us, verifying that our approach to sustainability is aligned with our values. And also, I think, just given the nature of the topic, there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to sustainability reporting. If it's net zero emissions, what you include, what's not included. And I think internal audit and the skill set that internal audit bring to sustainability is extremely valuable. And I think that's going to be an ongoing. I think it's going to be an ongoing involvement for us as we progress our journey. And
there are a couple of things that you've picked up upon, and it's that interest in sustainability that all of us, I believe, have had throughout our careers. But it's probably fair to say that we didn't start off, and by the way, we're all accountants here, and throughout our qualification process, I wouldn't say that we actually had a huge amount of sustainability back when we started studying and initially into membership. But actually, Dale, you mentioned a couple of topics about greenhouse gas emissions, net zero. There are lots of new topics for us to be engaging with, and certainly you have engaged with it within your role. And so I'm going to move on to that third area around the capabilities that are necessary, in particular the skills, behaviours and mindset. So what are they? And perhaps a few reflections as to how they're best accessed.
Yeah, it's a great question. It was certainly an experience for me getting involved in net zero and sustainability, what I think was just a few years ago, but I think reflecting on the skills and the capabilities, I found it really helpful looking again through the guide. And I've pulled out a few from the guide that for me really resonated. So the first one is drive. I think it's been really important to be motivated and have the right attitude. I don't think you can go into this without that. And I think it's been hugely beneficial having that motivation and drive to, I think there's a lot to it. I think it's the alignment with our values and seeking out the right answers and doing it in the right way. So I think drive has been really important. I think motivating yourself and other people, I think it's a topic that has been emerging for the last couple of years. And I think motivating other people to have an interest in it, to be going on that journey with you, I think is really important. And I think that's a key capability. And I think also looking at stretching goals and being curious. When we set our targets around net zero, they were, I think, quite ambitious targets. And I think it's really important that we're able to, I suppose, support those decisions and support those targets in that kind of a way. So drive for me was really important. I think ethics is also really important, again, because of the subjectivity of the topic. I think you can often come across decisions or discussions that you often have to really consider it from an ethical perspective. And one of them might be what you include in your scope 3 emissions and what you don't. So I think that's a real important capability that's here. And I think also with ethics as well, there's a real opportunity to help shape the vision, the strategy and policy of an organisation. So I think getting involved with sustainability and having that skill set around ethics is important from that perspective. Third one for me was expertise. When I came into this, I had no real experience or expertise around net zero or sustainability, but I did have the background of the ACCA qualification. And that, for me, I think helped quite significantly. I think the broad skill set that I took from ACCA, from my qualification, from being an accountant, really helped. And I think for anybody working in sustainability, I think expertise is a really an important point. I've likened it a lot to accounting standards. So a lot of what's happening in sustainability reporting with the new standards and around things like emissions reporting, I tried to approach it in the same way that I did when I was learning about all of the accounting standards, and actually having that basic skill set and being able to apply it and learn a new standard and new subject area, I think has been really important. And then the last one for me was collaboration. So again, talking about the steering group that we've got, working with people around all of our global offices, working with our suppliers, with the experts, with internal audit. It's been really important to be able to engage effectively with people, be clear in our communications, and I think that's been a real key capability. And I think going into a lot of the sustainability reporting, having that view I think could be really supportive and helpful with all of the reporting requirements.
That's great. And actually, one of the things that Dale's referenced a few times actually is the guide. And the guide to implementing sustainability reporting has a whole section devoted actually to the capabilities. So the capabilities that Dale has picked out as being relevant to him are probably going to be relevant to many watching today. But they are broken down into those that are core and within, the domain of every professional accountant, some of the newer areas that they need to be developing. So it's really quite good for all of us engaging to have a look at them and think, okay, which ones do we have and which ones do we need to build upon? And I think with that, I might just quickly turn to you, Maggie.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of capability, I think I talked a lot about how we've tried to build capability within the organisation. I think it's fair to say that is absolutely critical, and you're not going to achieve anything without that. However, sustainability covers such a broad range of issues, and some of them are very, very deeply technical, and some are very fast evolving. So I think it's also important to recognise where you do need to bring in external support, external help, and I think in particular where a topic is new. If we look at the sort of greenhouse gas emissions, the life cycle assessments, or particularly complex. So I think you've got to recognise all roles in an organisation have responsibility. You need to recognise where you need to bring in additional support. But I think the key reflection for me is you sort of also have to recognise that it's going to continually evolve. So what you're looking to do is skill up for starting it, but also it's about what's your long-term capability model that you're going to use to make sure that you can sustain this over the long period that you're going to need to.
And that's actually interesting. I think every day is a little bit of a school day when it comes to building our capabilities in this space. And actually, Dale touched upon an aspect around working with external stakeholders. And I'm going to stay with you, actually, Maggie, because being sustainable means bringing our suppliers, our customers, our members on that journey in terms of providing information, but also actually using it in the way that it's intended to be used. And I wonder if you could perhaps signpost some of the changes perhaps that we've made with our external stakeholder engagement in that space.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think actually in some ways managing externals isn't all that different from managing internal stakeholders. I think you've still got to go through the same elements, so they've got to appreciate what your sustainability ambition is. They've got to understand the data that you collect and why you want to collect that. And they've also got to understand what their role is in terms of it. But I think, we've talked about sustainability. It's not just about reporting on the organisation. It's about reporting on the full value chain. So that does mean that we do have to engage, so they're very clear on our expectations over what they need to provide to us, and that they're able to provide that information in a way that's robust and indeed is auditable. But we also have to engage more broadly. as a membership body with all our members and with everyone who reads our integrated report, so as that we raise the importance of sustainability and their understanding of it. And I think in terms of that reporting, the sort of elements that we're talking about is, we want to make sure everyone understands why we believe sustainability is important, how it features into our long-term success, but also how critical it is in terms of the delivery of our strategy. And when we do that external reporting, they also need to trust it. And that's really critical. And so that comes back to how do we ensure that that information is robust, reliable, engaging, but also can be subject to audit in terms of it.
It's an interesting point, Maggie. And I think for me, what you say about trust, it links back to one of the earlier questions we talked about audit. And for me, also part of how we do that, we've had our net zero targets and methodology validated by SBTI, the Science Based Target Initiative. And part of the reason we did that was to really get some assurance, but also to demonstrate, I think, to our external stakeholders that we were doing the right thing in the right way, and in the most meaningful way. And I think part of demonstrating that integrity and gaining the trust of our external stakeholders, I think SBTI and having our targets validated has really helped that. And again, it really shows that we're taking a robust approach around our measurement of emissions, and we're doing it in a science-based way that really makes a difference.
And I have to say, we really are actually quite close to time on this one, but I think there have been some fantastic points raised today. And what I'd like to do is just really end with pulling it all together, because a lot of what was raised really helps and should help organisations think about what their business case might be for investing in people. And so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if I were to sum up, there are a couple of big things. One is around ensuring that the culture is set, that the whole organisation is thinking about sustainability. And that requires that integrated approach in terms of the actions, integrated thinking. Ethics in particular, I think, you touched upon it several times, Dale, and I think that's really important when you're trying to build that trust. And there's going to be loads and loads of new learning for all of us, and it's something that is going to be an ongoing piece. So it's about being motivated to continue to learn. So with no further ado, I'm actually going to say thank you to Dale and to Maggie. I'm also going to leave the audience today with two key asks. One is please do watch the other 4 recordings that we've got around implementing sustainability reporting. So those focus on process, and they also focus on technology and data. And to leave you with the people considerations, we have 5 key questions for you to workshop. They can be used in education settings or indeed within your own organisation to think about how you can be more sustainable and communicate it effectively. But thank you very much for watching us today.